Right, up next, we are going to be diverting the conversation slightly. So we're going to be talking about the future of the fitness franchise, building an empowered franchisee network in 2021 and beyond. So I'm just going to add our panelists now. There we go. So today we have Andy Peat, we have April Fisk, and we have Donnie Oliver. Welcome, guys. Can you all hear me and see me?
Yes, I can.
I can. Welcome. Thank you.
Fantastic. Just checking we've got April.
Yeah, April's here. Alex?
Yes, I couldn't see her.
I saw her.
Sorry, guys, just working on my video.
Don't worry. It's always fun on the tech side of things. Okay, great. So to kick off, as usual, I just love you guys to just go around and give yourselves a little intro. So April, actually, we'll start with Andy. So give April a bit of time to get her video up. Andy, do you want to start off?
No worries. I'm always covering for April, so that's fine. My name's Andy Peat. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Lift Brands, so based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I do originally hail from New Zealand. Lift Brands is the parent company for a number of different brands around the world, including Snap Fitness being the main one, and Fitness on Demand, which is a virtual platform, and we also have shareholdings in 9 Round Fitness and Fitstop as well. So yeah, great to be here and great to be on a panel with such good industry experts.
Great, thanks. And April, do you want to take us through?
Sure, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I apologize on the video. We'll see if I can get that figured out here. April Fisk, CEO at RockBox Fitness. We are a boutique fitness brand all around the United States and look after building our brand and making sure that we have a great product out there in the kickboxing, boxing world. I'm excited to be here.
Great, thanks. And last but not least, Donnie.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. And April and Andy, nice to finally get on with you guys after these last couple of weeks of exchanges. I'm with UFC Gym. I recently took over the position of Vice President of Global Franchise Operations. My background, I started as a trainer 20 years ago in Southern California after graduating from Penn State University, and have worn a lot of different hats: general manager, fitness director, CRM liaison. was an interesting time there, and did some franchise consulting a few years ago. So this was naturally a good fit. And with UFC Gym, we've got brands across the globe. We've got 19 different territories across 40 countries. We've currently got 47 gyms open internationally, as well as the 100 plus that we've got here domestically in the US. And we also have a boutique extension of our brand, Class UFC Gym, which is basically just, the two things, our two best offerings out of our big boxes, right? Our kickboxing and our HIIT classes. So pumped to get on here and talk about, what's changing in the world of franchising through the pandemic.
Fantastic, thank you. And actually, it might be worth, just because I think it's really interesting to get people's backgrounds, especially within this network, because often people don't come directly into the franchise world. Andy, can you just give us a little background behind how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. It's been a heck of a journey, that's for sure. I've been in the fitness industry for about 15 years now. My background is I actually started as a personal trainer, but very quickly realized I became better at the membership side of things than the actual training side. So my background's in membership sales and then franchise sales. So I was one of the people who was lucky enough to have the opportunity to bring Snap Fitness, which was an American 24-hour franchise chain, to New Zealand initially. So we grew that in 2009. As well as over in Australia as well. So throughout that run, like anytime you start in a startup that goes into sort of hyper growth, you get to experience jobs that you may not have in other industries, and that's what's beautiful about the fitness industry. So I went through a number of different roles, from franchise sales through to C-suite positions, including the CEO of Snap Fitness Australia and New Zealand. And during that time, I've owned 9 franchise clubs myself within the Snap and 9 Round brand. as well as dabbling in the technology sector as well within the fitness space. And as of the last 3 years, our Snap Fitness Master franchise group from Australia and New Zealand was acquired by Lift Brands. And I've been looking after both the Asia Pacific region with a colleague Ty Menzies, and both Ty and myself now have the privilege of shifting over to America and working out of the global office. So we have about 1,200 clubs worldwide within the Snap brand that we look after directly, and which comes with multiple challenges, but it's also very, very great for my own personal growth and development. So I've been in franchising for a while now. I've seen the ups and downs. I've been a franchisee personally, and yeah, it's been a heck of a journey. So, actual fact, April was one of my early mentors and bosses at Snap Fitness. So it's good to connect with her again on this.
Very small world. Well, I guess on that note then, April, do you want to give us a little bit about your background?
Gosh, technology is killing me today. Yep, I'm excited to be here. I started franchising about 16 years ago. I actually started my journey at Snap Fitness. I was the 6th employee there and was there for about 13 years. And during that time, got to work with Andy quite a bit. We've known each other for lots of years, and really got the experience to work in probably almost every area of the business. I think the only department I didn't officially work in was marketing. And so I left there doing international development and operations and found myself at Orange Theory. I was at Orange Theory as the VP of international operations and did that for about 1.5 years. And then obviously found myself at RockBox as the president, and then became the CEO in March of this year. So really excited to be here. Obviously have been through a journey of franchising in the fitness space, and lots has changed in the marketplace over the last year, but really excited about the things that I've learned and to be on this panel with you guys.
Great, thanks guys. Very impressive backgrounds, I think all three of you. So, you know, on that, I think that's a really good starting point for us. So it would be great just to get each one of your views and kind of insights on basically how you've experienced the past 1.5 years. You know, what have been the main challenges you faced with your franchise networks during the COVID pandemic? April, do you want to kick off, seeing as you're still on the screen?
Sure. Yeah, you know, it's been interesting. We've been really fortunate, to be honest. We opened 7 studios right during COVID, and we had about an 84% retention rate through our membership base. So we're a really, really high touch product. So that allowed us to obviously have to shift virtually, but we were able to do that because we were already so connected with our members through technology platforms. So that doesn't mean it didn't come with its challenges, right? When we had to close studios and had to overly engage even more with our members. But I think overall, you know, there's a lot of resilience out there. And what I found was the fitness space got far more news and attention than a lot of the spaces out there. I have never seen fitness talked about so much on news channels and on different platforms, which provided us an opportunity to continue to educate the population. You know, I think that's 23% of the American population exercise. And so if you think about that, it gave how many people actually started thinking about it that didn't have that opportunity before or didn't want it a part of their lives. So while challenging and definitely slower than what we would like to see, I think that the education part of fitness is as high as it could be. And we have so many more people interested in getting into the studios and really learning about what's mental health and what does that mean for their physical health and all of that. And so I think there was a lot of learnings, and we're seeing more growth than we've ever seen before, you know, right. Kind of we'd like to say we're post pandemic, although, you know, who knows, but I think we have to continue to learn from it. And the good news is that it launched all of us into a digital space more quickly than we were probably ready to go, but now we are there. And so now we get to kind of have 2 avenues of our business.
Amazing. Yeah, I think, you know, we're hearing a lot of similar stories in that aspect, people having to adapt very, very quickly. So thank you for sharing that. Donnie, do you want to give us a bit of an insight into how the past year has been for your franchises?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as April talked about, I think where she was finishing up, I think a lot of brands, we were already all sort of dabbling on whiteboards in our offices on how do we get in this digital space and how do we evolve? And well, here's your timeline. Like you don't have time to talk about it anymore, right? You got to do it. And I think, that some things came up there, right? Resiliency was one. And, we had a lot of our team members, a lot of our managers that were willing to, even while we were still figuring out, okay, what platform are we going to use? And, how are we going to host this? They were just like, I'll start putting classes on Instagram Live. I'll start putting classes on Zoom. And I think the benefit, for our industry is because we attract so much talent that is sort of has a positive leaning and an optimistic leaning that yes, the sky is falling. But everybody was like, we're going to make it through. Right. That doesn't offset necessarily the challenges that came, right? Revenue stopped. Your brick and mortars close up. We're still, with Ursa and a lot of other places, still trying to fight for legislation to get back pay and money for gyms because landlords didn't ease up on rent, So there was a lot of those challenges came and that revenue dried up, expenses didn't stop, then a lot of brands were forced to look at, do we lay off? Do we furlough? Do we file for bankruptcy, right? We saw some major players have to close a number of stores. And then those are, bankrolled companies. When you're talking about franchising, you've got, individual proprietors. They've got one, maybe two boxes. They're really getting squeezed. And then it comes down to relationships. So I think, for us as a franchisor, a lot of what we were doing was assisting and advising on, hey, how do we reapproach these conversations with your landlords? How do we support you as a franchisor to get you a digital space to operate in? But honestly, a lot of it was increasing your level of touch points and communication and being emotionally supportive. I think EQ became so much more important as you tried to keep franchisees engaged, keep showing them that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You're going to make it through this. And as April talked about, there's this sort of silver lining that we're looking at, that maybe what we do is, instead of what we've been doing for the last 2 decades as an industry and all fighting over scraps of the same percentage of the population that works out, maybe this expands that bubble. And what we get really good at is increasing the percentage of our population that globally and domestically that participates in fitness. And I'm really hopeful that that's where we go from here, is that we start to just increase the size of the pie rather than fighting over the slices of the pie.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably where you and April are kind of touching on the same things there, right? This educational piece around drawing more people in to the fitness world, whether it's traditionally for weight loss or mental health or just generally wanting to be healthy, right? So yeah, it's really interesting. And look, I think what would be really good to understand as well is how within this current environment, independent operators, for example, might consider going into a franchising network or trying to expand into becoming a franchisor themselves. Given obviously the tumultuous period we've been through, I'm guessing it would be quite overbearing for some people, but what would you still advocate it? Like, how would you go about, I guess, advising someone to go down that route in this situation?
I'll let Andy jump in there for sure.
Yeah, Andy, do you want to take that one?
So, yeah, sorry, just how would I advise, just to be clear, how would I advise someone who's potentially going to go franchising or become a franchisor?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's always an interesting talking point, is like, why do a franchise gym versus do your own gym? And there's no one answer, because it's really suited on what the personality of the operator is and what their dreams are. Essentially, some people have dreams to be the next Ray Kroc and start a McDonald's type scalable business, and other people, they just want one or two. I personally believe, and one of the reasons I do love franchising, particularly in the fitness space, and why I advocate for people who want to get into the gym industry and own their own clubs to do so via a franchise, is because the creative power that comes with setting up your own shop, coming up with a name, building a website, color schemes, design, like that's not for everyone. And I think that takes like a special human to be able to truly, truly pull that off. And to be able to join a franchise that's already made the mistakes that you don't have to make. And there's always going to be mistakes with any sort of startup. I always say with franchising, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And I think that that's a great saying that really just tells the story as to why to join a franchise, because there's power in numbers, right? So whether it be from a marketing standpoint, a branding standpoint, but really from an operational standpoint, where if you join a franchise, you instantly get access to IP and knowledge that you wouldn't have done if you were by yourself. It would take a lot longer. I also think financially as well, you shouldn't be spending really any more money to do a franchise gym than what you would do in your own gym, when you think about all the things you have to create, all the time you have to spend creating your own ops manuals and training staff and picking out uniforms. Like it is a very hard thing to do. But when you sign up to do something like a Snap Fitness, a UFC, a RockBox, something like that, they're essentially going to give you a package, and that package is tested and proven, and it's templated. You just need to focus on creating a community in your gym, selling memberships, and keeping your members longer. So I think as well, like franchising is a hot topic right now, because a lot of people have either been made redundant, or they're a bit more wary of the fact that maybe I don't have the job security that I thought I did. So, maybe it's time to jump into something that I truly love in life. And fitness is one of those passion projects that people do enjoy and they like. And if I was starting off again and I had to make the decision between whether I'd start my own gym or do a franchising one, it would really come down to what my goal is in life. If it's to have one or two or three really good looking gyms that, produce good income, and I'm part of something bigger than myself, then I would do a franchise club, every day of the week, just to have that support as well. So I'm not sure if that answered the question or not, but
yeah, no, it does. And I think, there'll probably be a lot of people in the audience that, probably weigh that up. And I think there's the other side of it as well. If people are already independent operators and they're thinking about maybe turning that into a franchise as well, how they'd even go about that. I mean, April, I don't know if you've got some thoughts on that at all.
Yeah, I absolutely have some thoughts on that. I think that they're, just to make sure I'm answering your question, how they would go about franchising.
Yeah, so what would be the key things that they need to consider to actually embark on that journey?
Absolutely. And I think Andy articulated those, some of those quite well. I think that there's, first of all, you have to go through your search well, right? Find the franchise that fits into your values. And I'm big on that. And I think finding a franchise or that has values that aligns with yourself and aligns with what your goals are is really important, as well as finding the one that is going to support you the way that you feel like you need supported as well. So getting to know those people, knowing who you're going to work with. We know that franchising is very involved, and you're going to be working with those home office staff. So you have to make sure that you feel that you can be a part of that culture, and that culture matches up with who you are. And understanding, do you want to be a franchisee that's involved every day in your business, or do you want to be an owner operator, or do you want to be someone that has a staff that you only have to come in every once, you have to decide what type of involvement do you want in this business, because that should lead you to decide what type of franchise you want to be involved with. I would assume that the three of us would all say franchising is the way to go, because we've been in franchising for a long time and we see the benefit of it. And so just really understanding what that looks like. And if you have an existing gym or studio or cycle or kick, but whatever it may be, finding a concept that potentially you could convert your studio over or your gym over at somewhat maybe of a minimal cost. But finding that one that really aligns with you, I think is most important. And then meeting the team that's going to be supporting you and making sure that you feel like you could work with that team, I think is probably, for me, the most important decision that you can make.
Great, thank you. And I guess kind of leading on from that, how do you kind of see the onboarding experience as being a kind of really important part of, you know, building a successful relationship with your franchisee network? Donnie, maybe you want to chime in on that one.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you're talking about onboarding, and again, I'm going to go back to roots of being a trainer, right? Yes, you're going to have some standardized, right, central onboarding processes, but, you know, as I would if I was bringing on clients as a trainer. But every individual is different, right? Where their start point is and what their goal is, as Andy and April both talked about, is going to be different. So if I've got a client that's got a different start point and they've got a different goal, I'm going to interact with them a little bit differently, right? There's still some boxes that I need to check. So, you know, I think about when somebody's getting into franchise, if it's, as April pointed out, if it's going to be somebody who's owner operator, they're going to be there day to day. It's going to be a little bit different. And you tie that in with what Andy was talking about. I think so many franchisees sometimes, especially those that are going from being in the industry, maybe I was a GM or maybe I was a trainer or fitness director and I want to own a piece of the action, but they don't think about is, okay, now you got a lot of calls, you got admin, you got, you know, licenses that you need to get, and you got all this, and you get pulled away from what it is that you want to do, right? And now am I able to teach classes, which is what I'm really passionate about, right? Well, the onboarding path for that person is going to be a little bit different, and we've got to mold it to what they're going to be doing. If it's somebody who's coming in and they're going to be, hey, I just kind of want to be an investor, I'm going to hire a general manager, I'm going to hire people, and I want this to generate some passive income. And that's a funny term, certainly in our industry, passive income. But again, your onboarding process is going to be different, right? Because now we've got to talk about that hiring process and strategically how you're going to do that. Again, I'm going to circle back around to it, right? That EQ becomes very high, right? We've got a lot of different people get into franchising. And I think the challenge that I've experienced over the years with franchising, and in a good way, I think challenge gets connotated negatively and not necessarily needs to be. But the challenge is that you've got somebody who has this entrepreneurial spirit that, you know, wants to do a lot of things their way. And so I think a lot of our onboarding has to center around flexibility within a framework, right? There's some things that, you know, we want you to dabble with, right? Sometimes we get some of our best practices come from franchisees experimenting with a little bit of stuff, right? But don't go rogue, right? Let's talk about what you want to do. Let's talk about how that fits with the brand, right? When Andy was bringing up, you know, sort of, you know, I think about the movie The Founder, right? When Michael Keaton's going around and they're selling fried chicken at the McDonald's, it's like, okay, that's not what we do, right? You can try some things, but it still has to be in the box. You know, and that's the challenge. And in a beautiful way, that's the challenge, just working with people with an entrepreneurial spirit that want to, you know, go out there and do that. And so I think the onboarding process, it really has to start the interviewing and franchise sales process. So what you need, what you're expecting from us, but also very clearly what we're expecting from you. And when you're setting expectations as for what you expect of a franchisee, you have to be willing to say that not every franchise applicant's a good franchisee. And you as the franchisor have to be willing to walk away if that conversation gets to a point of like, well, I'm going to want to do this, and I'm telling you, you're probably not going to be able to do that, then maybe this isn't the right relationship. And that's where, like Andy said, then that's where maybe you launch your own brand, right? And so as franchisors, I think we've got to be diligent about that.
And that's really interesting, right? Because I think touching on the point of there's a real entrepreneurial spirit when it comes to the type of people that are entering A, the industry, but B, obviously this kind of operational role. How it'd be interesting to hear from you, Andy, actually, like, how do you empower your franchisees to kind of taking that balance, right, in doing what you need them to do and work within the parameters you need them to work within, but also giving them that flexibility? How do you go about empowering them in that way?
Yeah, it's such a fine balance, because they can run rogue, and ultimately when franchisees go like rogue to the extreme end, it's very clear that they probably shouldn't be in a network. They're that type of personality that Donnie was talking about, where they could grow their own brand. And I think that a lot of the times when someone joins a franchise, they think they're going to stick to the play and because it's been tested and proven. But over the course of their operations in the years, there's opinions that come up that, this way would be better than that way. And that's like natural in humanity. So in terms of how you empower them, like empowerment is really like, it's a process of trying to become stronger and more confident. Like that's like the meaning of the word empowerment. So for me, it's about ensuring that the franchisees trust the franchisor. And if they trust that what we're doing is in the betterment of their success, and we only succeed if the franchisees succeed. And if they have a little bit of like empathy around the fact that like not everything's gonna pull off, and not everything's gonna maybe suit their market. But if we're constantly out there showing that we are doing everything humanly possible to help them succeed, that's where that trust is going to come in. Particularly, we have, a number of corporate clubs. We have like a franchise advisory council, and we're in a position now, like we won't do anything new without testing it in those two groups first before we launch it out. And that way the franchisees know that by the time it gets like a new, say, process or product or whatever, by the time it gets to them has been tested and proven. How do you empower them to like be innovative still and feel like they have that the ability to do it? Like they're not in a prison of a franchise agreement. It's really about setting the standards and setting them early. And as Donnie said, a lot of great things come from franchisees trying something new. I actually think the Big Mac came from a franchisee. As an example, the best way to do it is to ensure that if the franchisee wants to try something, that they do it in collaboration with the franchisor. They talk to them about it. They advocate for it. They do a business case. And if the franchisor thinks it makes sense, they then control it to that one or two clubs. They control it in that environment. So then it doesn't get out of hand. And everyone just thinks that they can do their own thing. And it is a fine balance. But empowerment to me comes in franchising. It comes through collaboration, and probably cohesion would be the word. If everyone out there, say with us, 1,200 clubs across the globe, across multiple countries, different cultures, and what we're doing in Saudi Arabia is not going to be the same as what we're doing in Japan, for example, because you've got two completely different cultures there, but they're all working under the same values, the same umbrella. They're wearing the same clothes. That type of cohesion allows those regions to feel empowered to localize. So what we did, just as an example that I think might be beneficial for people listening, is what we did was we came up with what we call a standards funnel. And that standards funnel is broken into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is like our non-negotiables. Like, I don't care what country you're in. I don't care what language you speak. Like, these are non-negotiables. So like, and for McDonald's, for example, it would be the golden arches would be like a non-negotiable. For us, it's obviously the logo. It's a certain style of our entrance and certain aspects in our member experience. Tier 2 then becomes, okay, here you've got options. You can do these 2 different flooring types when you're building the club out, or you can go this way or that way, but you can't go a 3rd or 4th way. We've got a couple of options there. And then tier 3 is localization. So what needs to be localized to a local market because of the differences there. And if franchisees see that you're working within a parameter like that, and that there is a bit of flexibility, they can localize a little bit, they feel like they can share their opinion without being shut down straight away. That cohesion then goes a long way in not only the success of the franchisees, the success of the members, but franchise sales as well. Because to Donnie's point, when someone sits down with your franchise sales rep and they tell you that they want to change X, Y, and Z, you have to be disciplined enough to be able to go, okay, this person's not going to sit within our funnel. It's best that they open up their own gym. And it's very, very hard, particularly when you're brand spanking new. I remember when we were starting Snap in New Zealand, it's hard to turn people away who are willing to write you a check. It's very, very hard. But I was young and dumb, so I didn't know any better. So, and I just had a rule: if I couldn't have a coffee with them and not walk away, being glad to walk away, I'd be happy to sell them a franchise. So that's how I feel we do and deal with empowerment is really working around those tiers systems and ensuring that franchisees feel like they can innovate, not be turned away.
Absolutely. So it's almost like having essentially a solid playbook, right? For you to kind of give to your franchisee and say, look, these are the parameters, you can work within them. Ah, there we go, Donnie, flashing one. Perfect timing. I mean, while you brought that up, do you have a similar system to Andy over at UFC?
Yeah, he hit it on the head, right? There's this marriage of collaboration, right, and trust. And it's his point, right? If you're meeting with somebody and you walk away from it exhausted, like in the initial meeting, like, ooh, man, this person exhausted me in one meeting, right? Are we gonna sign a 5, 7, 10-year franchise agreement, and I'm married to this person for the next decade? That's challenging. But no, like there's stuff that is, hey, here's brand guidelines. These are, like he said, non-negotiable. Then there's some room for options and choices, right? We've got different amenities at our different sort of brand, structures. We've kind of got ourselves. We have sort of 3 different brands. We've got the UFC gyms, we've got UFC Fit, we've got Class, and those have different build outs, different equipment options that you can select from. But then there's some, hey, there's different square footages and different square meters and different layouts, and not everything is going to work, right? Different ceiling heights. So you got to take those things into account, and that's where that flexibility comes in. And then the localization, specifically, when I'm talking about international, each of our groups, sort of master franchisor for their territory, they've got their own marketing teams, right? And so what we do is they submit quarterly marketing plans, and our marketing team, reviews those, gives feedbacks. There's a little bit of redlining that goes back and forth, and ultimately come to a conclusion like, okay, great, roll with that campaign. So I think you've got to, again, in franchising, you've got to allow that. There's got to be some ego setting aside of, we don't have all the answers, right? We don't. And the only way you're going to come to those answers sometimes is, hive thinking and, group, crowdsourcing it essentially. And sometimes, a franchisee somewhere will run a campaign, and our team looks at it and goes, hey, that's something that we could use in our domestic network or in our corporate stores. But I think something super critical for any franchisors or anybody thinking about that they've got a concept that they want to franchise, that Andy was talking about, is you can't use your franchisees as guinea pigs. If you've got something you want to try, you try that in your own stores. You try that in, where you've got skin in the game. You pressure test it. You iron out all the wrinkles. Then once it's baked, it's ready for show, then you cascade that out to your franchisees. And ultimately, when you do, you will get pushback on certain things that you're rolling out. As Andy brought up, you've got to remind them, like our financial relationship structure is, the more revenue you generate, the more royalties we get. So we're not doing things to have you drive less revenue. We're trying to amplify your revenue, expand your footprint. That's the only way we make more money. Right. So I think when you can keep that at the forefront, anytime things start to get a little squiggly and start to go sideways, just kind of reminding them that this is set up in such a way where you win, we win, you lose, we lose. So we're, if you go up high enough that ladder of alignment, we're aligned. So we've just got to remind ourselves of that sometimes.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. Thanks, guys. Okay, so just pivoting slightly, I think, we've talked a lot about, I guess, the direct relationship between franchisee, franchisor, but it'd be really great to hear about how you create a culture within, such a big organization that is quite disparate. April, maybe you could chime in on this one.
Absolutely. I think culture and organization starts from day one. So that's within your own team, as well as your franchisees, those prospects who are coming in. For me, I think everything starts with the relationship, and use the word empowerment. I think everyone needs to feel empowered to be successful and to be great, and to be able to make decisions that impact a future goal that you can all chase together. So also it goes back to those values and understanding what is our company values? And first step is making sure that the employees that we're hiring align with those company values. And then so that every decision we make is actually surrounded around those values. And then you can start to create a culture where you all know what you're chasing, and you all know the purpose. And then you bring a prospect in, and we always lead with our values, even with our prospects, to say, do you fit in with this? And then creating this culture where, I think you have to have fun to be able to enjoy the experience and be successful. So, I always talk about communities amongst communities, and that's so important in franchising. You have kind of your home office community, and then you have a franchisee community. And then in our model, we have our head trainers and our general managers, and we have communities that we do webinars with just those people so that they can feel a part of something, rather than, being one studio in San Diego when another studio is in North Carolina. Gives us an opportunity to really build culture within each of these communities. And then when you bring them all together, all of a sudden you realize, wow, we're really a part of something big. And then the members start to do it as well. And we create those communities inside our studios, and then they start to do it with each other all around the nation. And all of a sudden you've got a really good culture where when people say, for us, when people say RockBox, we want them to say, that is so fun. Fight Club meets nightclub. We want that to be our culture. And that starts in our home office. And that starts with what we do every single day. And that's from the leadership all the way through, right? We have to be servants. We have to be willing to, clean the toilets. We have to be willing to do whatever we need to do to be successful, and create the opportunities for people to grow, right? I wouldn't be in my position where I'm at today if I didn't have people along the way that let me grow. So I think we all have to do that for each other, within our own organizations, as well as kind of key relationships outside of our own organizations. But I think culture is key. You look at the most successful franchisors out there, and you'll see culture within it. And there's systematic ways that they create that culture. And I think you have to be intentional. You can't expect it just to happen. You have to have at least one person that's spearheading the need for that culture, and making sure that every single day that you're able to chase after that and you actually reach it. And that should be in every phone call with franchisees, every phone call with studio staff, every time we see each other in the office. But I think it starts from day one. From the second someone hears about you as a franchisor or as a brand, they have to feel that culture through every single way that they hear about you.
No, I totally hear you. And I think, everything you said is very apt, and actually just as relevant to, independent operators as much as it is to, bigger franchise networks. But thank you so much for your insight on that. I think, talking on growth as well, like Donnie, I know, you kind of do a lot of global expansion there over at UFC. I know we touched on, I think it was Saudi earlier in one of the earlier roundtables. I'd love to just hear your insights on where you think like the kind of next hotspots for, kind of building out the franchise networks are, like, where are they coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it ties into one of the questions that was in the chat, right? Somebody was asking about, percentage of people that are working out, over in the Asia Pacific market, and we've got, and this, so I'm going to tie in the culture piece to this and the expansion piece, right? When April's talking, how do you get culture, I think, and spread it, especially as you hit massive growth spurts, right? That's where it becomes challenging. And I think sometimes about, you think about some of the people that are most bought in and most tied to your culture, and you extract culture from one hub and you inject it into another, right? We've got, like, currently our Middle East operators, they've got a number of the countries over in that Middle East area, including, Saudi Arabia is one of them, but, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt and Qatar and Kuwait. But what we did is we had our general manager from our Costa Mesa gym, here in Southern California, and that's the one that's owned by Cub Swanson and Mike Bisbing. Our general manager that was at that location, grand opened that store. He had been at one of our Huntington Beach franchises for years before that, Rafi. He relocated and he lives in Dubai now, and he's working with that Middle East group. So we were able to take somebody who understood our culture, a decade with the brand, hey, we're going to pull this guy out of Southern California. We're going to send him over there. And he's not the first one that we've done with that. We've had coaches that have moved into positions from domestic operations to international. So sometimes it's physically, right, injecting the culture into areas where you're growing. Case in point to that, one of our vice presidents for our franchise development and expansion, Mike Apple, he recently relocated from Southern California to Thailand. So he's living over there right now because that's an area that we're, looking to expand in a lot right now. And I mean, we already have a good footprint there with, gyms in Japan and Singapore and Thailand, Taiwan. But, there's a lot of territory that we could get into there. So having somebody there in those time zones and locally, kind of hard to hop around right now and country hop right now at this time. But, as restrictions change, he can get boots on ground and meet with people face to face. Because I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges, right? In such a emotionally driven and contact driven and, touch, physical touch driven industry, it's been challenging to do a lot of this business via Zoom. And it'll be nice to be able to actually get in front of people. But I look at, where those hotspots are at. Obviously the Middle East, we've got a growing footprint there. Asia Pacific, we've got a growing footprint there. If you think about more closer to where I'm at here in Southern California and looking at it more geographically, I'll look at pockets of Southern California and, here, things can be so ethnically dense in certain, you go 5 miles away from Huntington Beach and, you go to Fountain Valley and you've got a very, high Vietnamese population. And all of a sudden how you operate a gym is very different because it's such a drastic, shift in the makeup of the population. And so I think about with brands that I've worked before, when we were opening gyms, say in Huntington Park, California, which is like east of USC, it's a very Hispanic, 99% Hispanic population. And I remember 15 years ago, that was a demographic that wasn't really engaged with fitness the way that maybe the rest of the US was. And we were looked at like, oh, like you're going in there, but it's not, you got to get out in front of it. Sometimes you're going into markets early, right? And before the population is really adapted to fitness and the culture, and you're going in, think about like you're buying property in an area before gentrification happens, right? You're getting in early. And so sometimes it's looking at where are there low percentages of fitness acclimation? Where are there low percentages of participation in fitness? And you get an operator or a franchisee that has an appetite and has a vision and knows that there's going to be some bumps in the road going into a market that isn't densely populated with gyms, right? It might be easier to open a gym in a market, in a geographic center where there's already a lot of gyms, but there's also a lot of competition. And so there's trade-offs, right? And so I think you've got to have, again, this goes back to the franchise sales process and identifying the strengths of a franchisee. And is it somebody who's has an appetite, has a vision, maybe has a little bit more financial backing and a little bit more runway for it to take time to take off, versus a franchisee who's maybe like, I'm going to rub 2 pennies together here to make a nickel. And I really want to do this. Well, let's put that person in a place where there's maybe a little bit more immediate success. Maybe the return isn't as high, but they can get an ROI quicker. And so you've got to be strategic again as a franchisor on how you pick your franchisees in the markets that you're going into.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. Yeah, that's really interesting, Donnie. I think especially hearing that it's not necessarily about picking a country, that it's about identifying where there are opportunities right within the population and density as well, obviously being a key thing. So thank you so much for sharing that. I realized we've run out.